My most toxic personality trait is I am one of those people that has to work out every day on vacation. Every day in general, actually, but more specifically on days when my wife and my friends would just prefer that I didn't. I'm also a jitsu competitor, which means that my ideal road workout involves me traveling to some exotic location and paying strangers to fight me. I've trained everywhere from LA to New York to Rio de Janeiro and a ton of places in between. It usually is awesome, sometimes isn't, and I rarely regret it. But here is the time that I came close. I was on a breakneck weekend trip to LA, and I didn't feel like making a blood sacrifice to the traffic gods so that I could drive to the west side and train with some people I knew. Instead, I did a quick and dirty Google search and I found an open mat a couple blocks away from me. Honestly, I've done more research on restaurants that Chriselle ate at on Selling Sunset than I did on this place. So what came next probably serves me right. The gym was inside a lofty warehouse space and gave off some serious Law and Order SVU vibes. I was the only guy there, except for the instructor, who I could tell was the instructor because he had cauliflower ear that looked like two baby's fists stapled to the sides of his head. I could also tell that he didn't get a lot of visitors because he seemed genuinely puzzled when I asked him about the drop-in fee, but also relieved when I just palmed him 20 bucks. Looking around at the empty gym, I asked him, "When does everybody show up?" To which he responded, "They don't. It's usually a pretty slow day." So I put on my gi and I start warming up. And about 30 minutes later, this Cocker Spaniel looking guy walks in with his gi stashed loosely underneath his arm, like some hastily busted tablecloth at the old spaghetti factory. When he gets on the mat, he smells like all we had for dinner last night was White Claw, nose beers, and some poor choices. But he's the only other guy there, and he happens to be the same belt and rank as me. At the time, I was a 2-stripe blue belt. So we slap hands and bump fists, and while my arm is still hanging out, he jumps a flying triangle, which I thought was a little aggressive. If you don't know what a flying triangle is, it is a move that is as preposterous and magnificent as it sounds. It involves launching your body through the air while only holding on to your opponent's head and arm, and then catching all of your body weight around your opponent's neck and shoulder, like the most violent pole dancing move you have ever seen. And then you attempt to strangle your opponent by squeezing your knees together, constricting the carotid artery until the blood flow shuts off to the brain and they black out or tap out. If it sounds like a long shot, that's because it is. In fact, in the nearly 1,000 officially sanctioned UFC fights, only 4 have ever ended in a flying triangle submission. It is like a you up text at 1:52 a.m. to that person you went on a COVID date with 9 months ago and haven't talked to since. Yeah, it's a long shot, particularly for a couple of jabronis in a warehouse in Highland Park. To start your first round of sparring with a complete stranger with a flying triangle is like meeting someone from your fraternity at brunch or wherever frat guys hanging out, and instead of doing your little secret handshake, you just open mouth kiss. Yeah, I thought it was a little aggressive. I quickly employed the best 2-stripe blue belt defense that I know to a flying triangle, which is to collapse all of my body weight directly on top of him, folding him in half, forcing him to either release his legs or incur a life-changing spinal injury. We scramble for a little bit, and a few minutes later I catch him in a shoulder lock. As we're tying our belts and adjusting our gis, I have to talk about the 500-pound geometric shape in the room. "Hey bud, flying triangle, huh?" To which he responds, "Yeah, it's kind of my thing." And he wasn't lying, because moments later, he does the exact same thing, which I defend the exact same way, only this time, I take my time with it, grinding on him, applying a little extra pressure in hopes that running out this scenario a third time just seems really, really unappealing. But sure enough, he does it again, and again, and again, never with the desired effect. In fact, the only time he does catch me is when he switches it up and shoots for a flying Kimura shoulder lock. Also pretty aggressive. Eventually he gets frustrated or sweats out all the excess sugar from the night before and leaves. With no one there to train with, I leave too. So on Monday, when I get back to my academy, the first thing I do is tell my professor this whole thing. 1, because I want him to know I didn't take a weekend off. There was a belt promotion coming up. And 2, because I thought it was preposterous. Like, is this some secret Brazilian tradition that I don't know about? Was I the guy in the wrong? And the first thing my professor asks me, the first thing he asked me is if I tapped. But the second thing he asks me is, what did his professor do? To which I responded, nothing. And he just said, huh, and shook his head in disapproval. See, he wasn't ultimately too surprised that some gacked out yahoo would repeatedly try and perform an aerial silks routine on my face, but he was surprised that someone with some authority, even a little bit, would stand by and just let it happen. Particularly when he knew that letting this happen would reflect so poorly on the place where he was from. In fact, it was as if allowing this to happen over and over said far more about the professor than it said about the student. And honestly, that lesson was worth the sore neck and $20.